Hi. So, hi everyone. My name is Matan Field, and yeah, I will be speaking English. So, firstly, I would like to know, maybe if just raise your hand if you understand really good English or if you need translation. Okay. Very well. So I will try to speak slowly, and if I forget, please remind me, because I have a tendency to speak faster and faster. So I'll try to maintain slow speaking. Okay, so I'm coming from Israel. I'm 37. I have 2 sons. For most of my adulthood life, I was a theoretical physicist in the academy. I was researching string theories, which is about the unification of physics, well, like in larger scales. And as a sidekick, I was also doing some social entrepreneurship, cooperatives and such. I started founding a food cooperative in Jerusalem. And about 3 years ago, I came across a new technology, the blockchain, which I will tell you today about. And basically, it has so much disrupted my mind that I just decided to quit physics and focus on that technology, and basically I would say, take that technology and to serve the collaborative economy and the social entrepreneurship direction that I was involved in before. It has a lot of also consequences for non-social economy, but I want to bring that aspect to that technology. Okay, so the title of the talk is Reorganizing the World. By the way, I can speak, and I think I have also another talk tomorrow. So I prepared a lot of slides. We don't have to finish them. We also have time tomorrow. We also don't have to stick to them. We can go right and left. And the best would be if you just ask questions. Just stop me, ask any question that you have, complained or anything. I mean, it's much better if it becomes a conversation, so please don't be shy. So, firstly, the blockchain revolution. Is it a revolution, or to what extent is it a revolution? So let me make a pretty bold assessment or statement. I will take it to the end. I mean, I will take it to the most extensive, I think, on the spectrum of all people that speak about blockchain as a revolution. I will take it to the extreme. I'm saying the following thing. If you look at human civilization, for all of its existence, from the beginning, I'm saying that human civilization is going through has been going through 2 stages throughout its existence. The first stage was hundreds of thousands of years of pretty much unorganized form. So for hundreds of thousands of years, there was no known form of organization beyond, a little family, beyond a few individuals. So for hundreds of thousands of years, which is a pretty static situation. And then starting with the linguistic revolution, roughly about 10,000, 15,000 years, suddenly something dramatically changed. So suddenly new forms of organization have emerged, and then with a growing scale, and with coming new revolutions, such as the agricultural revolution, the writing revolution, the democracy revolution, and then the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, and the internet revolution, and finally, notice that the frequency of revolution, the time scale of revolution has shrinked, and I'm claiming that we've just got to the end of that second phase with the blockchain revolution, and that civilization will enter in the next decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, civilization will enter a third stage, which of a totally different nature. So the second stage was characterized by organization, which was almost always a central organization, and I will elaborate on that. Okay. And I would like to make the claim that we are entering a new phase of decentralized organization, which will look very, very different. And I will try to explain how blockchain brings that about and how it might look like. So just quoting here Osho, who said once, life has no purpose, life is the purpose. That is to say, notice that life or civilization, and that's true not only for human being, but also for other species. Life is kind of forming gradually more and more complex structures, more and more processing of information, more and more interaction, more and more complexity. So maybe that's what life is about. Okay, so let's pose the stage, the problem. There is an internal or inherent ambiguity in this complex, or in this organization, in this structure. There's internal ambiguity with that. On one hand, individuals who are organized can achieve more together than they can achieve on themselves, on their own, right? So potentially, an organization can benefit all of its individuals if it is cooperative, if it supports the collective interests. But on the other hand, all of us, being self-interested, I'm not saying that not in a bad way, but really we have, our own ego, our own interest, our own physical body. As long as we have some identification with that, we have different interests, and we should not ignore that. And bringing a lot of individuals to one circle, bringing a lot of interest into one circle, inherently bring misalignment of interest. So that's something we cannot avoid, okay? So having interaction between people potentially can benefit everyone, but can also bring more complexity, more misalignment of interest. And that tension between those two edges is inherent to interaction, inherent to organization or interaction of human beings, not interaction of atoms, because atoms, they don't have self-interest. They don't have ego. But interaction of large-scale interaction of individuals who have self-interest must have that tension. And to complexify the picture even more than that, just by itself, coordination of many, many individuals just by itself is a very hard problem. So any sort of large-scale organization has to basically resolve the problems of coordination, the problem of information distribution, the problem of economy or incentivizing the individuals to act correctly, and the problem of trust, okay? So coordination is just kind of like the brain, the way, the mechanism, whether it's, it's centralized coordination, so it's somebody or something else, but the way that decides how people should interact with each other to serve the interests of that community, for hopefully the collective interest, basically. So that's what coordination is about. Information distribution is the means for that. Like eventually, to allow for large-scale coordination, we need to distribute information from one to another. Economy is there to incentivize the right behaviors of individuals. So if we, for example, if we are just ant colony, maybe we don't need economy, because ants just, they just behave as they are designed to behave. They don't turn right to left. But as individuals with self-interest, with ego, we need to have some incentive in order to act right. So for that, any organization need to have some sort of economy for that, large-scale economy. And finally, trust. Like if we are interacting in an economical way, we need to be able to trust each other. For example, if I'm going to give you some apples and I'm going to get in return some oranges, I need to know that after I give the apples, I will get the oranges. That's a very simple notion of trust. And the trust element is very, very elementary and recurring in every framework that you look at, whether it's the physical world or the digital world. Okay, so by the way, do you see the slides? Is it readable or not so much? Maybe you can turn off the lights here. What do you say? maybe these lights. So I'm not sure if you can see. Are you able to read? Okay. 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 So that slide is to say, there is a mantra here. I'm just trying to speaking about centralized organization, I'm trying to brainwash you. And there is a mantra that is recurring here, so we can all speak it together. Centralized organization is always in tension with scale and brings to asymmetry of power. Okay? Centralized organization is in tension with scale and leads to asymmetry of power. Let's see how it comes about. We said the centralized organization always have to have management. So the solution in terms of central organization for management will be central management as a source for coordination. But central management is always in tension with scale. It is very well known in large companies, in governments, that the management is always the bottleneck for growth, always the bottleneck for decision making, always the bottleneck for any sort of innovation. So central management is in inherent tension with scale. And clearly, if we are all self-interested, and if all of the power is concentrated in the hands of a few, then by definition that there is a huge asymmetry of power, which has to lead to misalignment of interest, which has to lead to corruption. We said the central organization has to have some sort of frame or platform for distribution of information. But if that platform is centralized, the platform for distribution of information is held by few people, then it is by definition in tension of scale, because that platform cannot grow infinitely, because it's concentrated. And by definition, there is asymmetry of power. Every powerful person in the world wants to have his own journalism, his own media channel. Why? Because if you control the distribution of information, you really control the minds of people. So centralizing communication, centralizing information distribution inherently leads to a huge asymmetry of power. We said the central organization has to have their economies, we said the organization has to have their economy, so central organization will have central banking system, central currencies, and that will be the source for the economy. Clearly, that is intention in scale. A few people can get less decision than many. And clearly, it leads to a huge asymmetry of power. Because if you control the economy, if you control the creation and distribution of value, of wealth in the world, you basically control everything. That has to lead to asymmetry of power, that has to lead to misalignment of interest, that has to lead to corruption. We said that organization need to have trust. So the centralized organization use law and enforcement of law as a source of trust. And again, it's in tension with scale, and it has to lead to asymmetry of power if a few people control law and enforcement for everyone else. So the mantra for everyone today, centralized organization is in tension with scale, centralized organization leads to asymmetry of power. Okay, I think you get the general picture. So in the last, the phase shift that I'm speaking about is not happening in one day. In terms of history evolution, it's like a blink of an eye. It's just like, a few decades, few hundreds years, it's nothing. But still, we see that revolution coming up for a few decades now, maybe for a few hundreds of years. So in the last, let's say 50, maybe 100 years, gradually the world is becoming more and more distributed. Not yet decentralized, but more and more distributed. It's interesting to notice that as much as the world is trying to get more distributed, then the centralized forces are getting stronger and stronger to resist that transition. So, for example, the open market, the global economy, is kind of a source for distributed economy and distributed coordination. The whole philosophy of the open market economy is that the open market is the best coordination, right? Just letting people to optimize their own interest and opening all the flows in between them, the economical flows in between them, will create optimization for everyone. So that's the claim. But it's far from being true. Firstly, it's far from being open. IP, information wall, regulation, there are a lot of barriers and walls. Secondly, it's far from being really distributed. So distribution, so wealth in the world is far from being distributed. And thirdly, and most important, the assumption that if each of us is optimizing his own interest, then we are all optimizing together the collective interest is just wrong. It's a wrong assumption, and the simplest example for that would be the prisoner dilemma. So maybe let me hold here because this is a very important point. Who knows what is the prisoner dilemma? Please raise your hand. Okay, so let me explain that point well. So the prisoner dilemma is a simple game theoretical play, or it's a game theory game of the simplest examples. It's just of two people that proves mathematically that if each of those people is optimizing his own strategy with respect to the expectation of the second person, a fixed expectation. So I think what he will do, and then I'm just optimizing my own strategy, and the same likewise the other way around. And you can show mathematically that we will behave in a way which is off-optimal for everyone. The problem is that we will be dragged into a situation of non-cooperation. So the problem is that the default will be non-cooperation. The second problem is that there is a better state of cooperation which is better for both of us. And the third most important problem for today and for the world is that non-cooperation is in an equilibrium state, okay? Equilibrium in physics, what we mean is that it's stable state. It's a state that is hard to run from. It's a state that it's very hard to get out of. Basically, no one would like to get out of that state alone. If we all together get out of that state, we win. But if I'm just by myself trying to get out of the state, I lose with respect to everyone else. Okay? Less fast. Okay, thank you. So I would like to suggest that we, as a society, we are constantly in a prisoner dilemma. The free open economy is not free, and the open economy is not optimizing for everyone, not for the collective interest. Far from being that. We are all the time in a prisoner dilemma. We're all the time in a situation that is not incentivizing us to act differently, but if we just all together act differently, it will be better for all of us. And the big question in the prisoner dilemma, how do we trigger that? How do we incentivize people to move to a different strategy that in the short term seems not beneficial, but in the long term beneficial for all? How do we bring that long term into the short term? How we design incentive system that basically push people to do the right actions. So I will not assume that people will change. I'm not assuming anything about the psychology of people that will be changed. I would like to work with that psychology and to incentivize the right action. Another change of the last 50 years, internet. The internet is again sort of free flow of information, distributed flow of information, but is it so? So firstly, it's not that free. If you know today, the internet is far from being free. It's actually held by very few companies, and the traffic information is held there. And when you search in Google, you think that you actually see the whole network. That's totally wrong. You see just the bubble of the network that Google decides to show you in some sense or another. We are not exposed to the whole network. And it's getting, by the way, worse and worse. Secondly, and this is a little bit abstract point, but it's very important. And I promise you that it will become more and more clear as we go along. The internet lacks consistency, okay? Which leads to inherent trust problem. What do I mean by consistency? So consistency, for example, is when I look at Pablo and I know that Pablo is still Pablo, right? And if I close my eyes and open it, I know that it is still Pablo. So now I can build relationship with Pablo. I can trade. And I know that in the next time, it will be still him. It will still be sitting here. The physical world is consistent. The problem with the internet world is that it is not consistent. If someone is showing up in the internet, it has some IP. But nothing guarantees to me who is standing behind that IP. If the next time that I will meet him, what will be the IP of that person? There is no consistency. There is no consistency of identities. There is no consistency of records. There is no way to track records in the internet that we all agree about. Okay? I know it's a little bit abstract. It will become more and more clear as we go along. But the gist of it is that there is no way to transfer value over the internet as it is designed today. But apart from one solution, which is the solution of the last 50 years, only through intermediaries. Okay? Intermediaries, large companies, they are basically providing us the service of consistency. They maintain identities. They maintain records. They track those records. And thus, the only way in the internet to have identities, to have relationships, to transfer value, the only way is by having those intermediaries. PayPal is an intermediary for tracking records of cash. Facebook is an intermediary of tracking records of identities. But once we are locked in that room, we are locked in those hands, we cannot escape. We cannot get back control of our identities. We cannot get back control over our value. So again, although the internet has promised distribution, it just got back to a worse situation. The uneven distribution of power is even worse in the internet era than it was before. And distributed law, we haven't seen any of that. Okay, so how about if we had this new infrastructure? How about if we had an infrastructure that allowed for this truly decentralized, truly free, truly trustless, which means that I don't need to trust anyone, truly consistent infrastructure? I would call that, instead of internet of information, it will be internet of value, okay? Value is something that we need to keep track of. Like information, we don't. For example, when I have a file, when I send you the file, I don't really send you the file. I send you the copy of the file, right? So there is no element of tracking records. There is no element of consistency. There is no consistency. We're just duplicating the information. When I send you a token, when I send you $1, I better be sending you the dollar and not keep the copy for myself. Otherwise, there is no value in that dollar, right? So how about if we had that, an internet of value infrastructure? And how about if we had on top of that a kind of collective brain that allowed us to have a decentralized economy and decentralized coordination, something that I would call decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO. And I will elaborate on that. Those are the main topics of my talks today and tomorrow, and I will elaborate on them. I hope that at the end of tomorrow's talk, you will fully understand what a blockchain is, and what's a decentralized autonomous organization, and how it will completely shift the world as we see today. So if you're asking yourself whether it's important for you, I'm saying it's more important than anything else that we can think of today for everyone. Okay, so that will be the summary of my talks. I just covered roughly the intro to the blockchain. It's just the warming up. Okay, I didn't say anything yet. And then I will tell you about the evolution of blockchain. Okay, so I will tell you about the whole subject in 3 chapters. Blockchain 1.0, which is kind of the past. Blockchain 2.0, which is the present. And blockchain 3.0, which is the future. Of course, it's not precise, so everything has past, present, future of that. But this is how it was historically, or is historically being built. So blockchain 1.0 is the public ledger. When I say public, I really mean that it's truly decentralized. It's truly owned and shared and controlled by the public. So blockchain 1.0 is the decentralized public ledger. Blockchain 2.0 is the decentralized and public computer, which is much more powerful. And blockchain 3.0 is the decentralized or public organization. So the computer, let's just to give you a gist of it right now, what's the difference between ledger or database, if you want, computer and organization? So the computer uses the ledger, uses the database, but it also has programs it can execute, right? The organization uses the computer, but it can also have human input into it. So that's the difference. So the ledger is just tracking system. The computer is also with a tracking system with a software, and the organization is a tracking system with a software with a human layer that can take decision, the collective brain. And I will make those things much more clear as we go along. So before I'm jumping in, so that don't worry too much about that table. I will try to put it again and again and again until at the end. So the goal of the talk is that the two talks. At the end of the two talks, I hope that you will feel comfortable with that table. So if you feel comfortable with that table, you understand everything that I have to say. Okay? So right now it seems like very cryptic. I will tell you about blockchain 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, about decentralized ledger, computer, organization, the gist of each layer. The first is kind of tracking value. The second is smart contracts. We'll see what it is. The third is collective intelligence. Let's skip the next one, and I'll give you a lot of examples, and maybe the interesting thing is the stage. So the blockchain 1.0 is already in the early product stage. We already see real products. We will see in the next few years real products coming in and changing industries from scratch, like turning industries on their heads. Blockchain 2.0 is still in the prototype phase. We don't see real product yet, where people are working on them, but it's way more powerful and transformative. And stage 3, which is basically this is my work basically, the research about decentralized governance and decentralized organizations. So that's still, I would say, in a research phase. We're starting to prototype things, but it's still in the research phase. Okay, so public ledger, which is the blockchain 1.0. Let's see. So let's talk a little bit about digital assets. So there is one limitation to everything that I will say to you today. There is just one little limitation. The one little limitation is that it only deals about digital. Okay, the blockchain doesn't know how to move people, in their hands and it's only about digital. And that's a bit of a limitation because not everything is digital. And much of the work that is being done today is how to relate the digital to the physical. Because we know how to enforce a lot of things in the digital world, but then how we enforce them on the physical world. That's a very interesting topic for research, but we'll focus only on digital. And if we talk about value, then we're speaking about digital value or digital assets. Yeah, I have a slide about digital asset later, I think. Yeah, it's here. Okay, so I will explain what digital asset means, but let's before getting into more abstract details, let's just look at some examples. So firstly, let's look at the example as they are today, and then I will explain you what's the problem, and then I'll explain you what is the solution of blockchain, and then we'll re-examine the same examples from the blockchain perspective, how they will look like in 2 years. Okay? So that's the plan. So let's start with the thing that your favorite, the thing that you like most. Let's start with banks and global transactions. So how easy or hard is it to make a transaction from the island of Tenerife to China? Has anyone tried that? Like you have an uncle in China, you want to send him $20,000, I don't know, you got a present or a prize, and you want to share it with your colleague in China, you want to send a transaction to China of $20,000. How easy or hard is it today? Does anyone know or have indication for? Fácil is hard, not easy. Fácil is simple or hard? Easy. Easy. And you say? So I'll tell you the answer. The answer that it can be amazingly hard. It can take weeks to transfer money from countries very far. It can cost you like $100. Although it's just, it's just about, we are in the digital era for like 40 years. Sorry, not digital, internet era for like 40 years. We just send a few bits from one computer to another computer, and yet this simple action may take 2 weeks, may cost $100, may need a lot of bureaucracy from both sides of the transaction, and may return in many cases. How can it be? How is it possible? That's a fact, what I'm telling you. That's a fact from personal experience.
So basically, what he says is that it seems easy because we don't see all the hidden costs, and we think that maybe it's cheap, and actually we don't know all these hidden costs that are involved in the operations.
Yeah, so that is totally true, but I'm saying that in many cases it's not even seen easy. I mean, in many cases it seems easy, but we don't see the hidden cost, and there are costs that someone else needs to pay. That's totally true. But in some cases, it's not even easy. That's in your case, or and in some cases, I'm saying that it's not even seem easy. So like, I actually know cases that you need to transfer just money from two countries, not even complicated, and it takes a week to just transact, a few dollars. It really depends on the banks you are part of. It depends on the countries. It depends on a lot of things. But how can it be possible? So let me give you the answer. Why it can be hard. It be difficult. The problem is a problem of trust, really. That's okay, like that. The problem is a problem of trust at the end, and interoperability. Okay. When you send money to someone in China, what happens is that you send the money to the bank, and the bank sends to the bank, and the bank to the person. Not yet. Those two banks, in most cases, don't have interface. They don't have the same protocol. Their databases are written differently. They don't trust each other's database. They don't trust that client is real. They don't trust that their verification method is worthwhile. So most cases, what happens is that there is another bank here that has interface with that, and another bank here that has interface with that, and those two banks need to interface, and then your transaction really need to go few legs between few organizations until finally there is a settlement. And more so, every two such bodies, when they do transaction, it's not just click of a button and the money goes from here to there. No, because they don't trust each other. They have different protocols. Even if they have agreements and they can speak, they have different protocols, different standards, lack of trust of each other's ability to detect fraud, for example. And then they will compare compare their database and do their procedures, and then they will ask for more bureaucratic information that it was missing, and it will go back and forth. This whole process can take 2 weeks, okay? But what if, I'll jump already to the answer instead of, what if we had a ledger, a universal ledger that has its own rules? It's just like a Google sheet that everyone can read, and everyone can write according to the rules. And that ledger, for example, can be the account balances for everyone in the world, okay? And when I click on a button that I'm giving my 3 tokens to someone else, it's just instantly, at that moment, it disappears here, appears there, and that's it. It's a fully trusted ledger. What if we had that? Basically, I'm kind of skipping to the next slide, but basically it's the end of banks. Let's talk about tracking systems of, there's a question.
Excuse me, but how far I understood your example now, this is a very centralized organization.
Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very good philosophical question. It is centralized in the sense that we all look at the same place, right? But it's totally decentralized in the sense that nobody controls it. It physically doesn't sit anywhere, or actually it sits everywhere, and I'll explain that properly when we get there. It doesn't have any geographical location. It doesn't have any control. It's like fully decentralized. It's centralized only in the philosophical sense that we all look abstractly at the same place. But this place is nowhere geographically, nowhere in the hands of anyone. And I'll explain how this magic happens. That is the blockchain, okay? That answer to the question? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm happy because you're asking questions. You make me happy.
You speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Anderson. Quizás el modelo que tú planteas es el movimiento de cantidades muy grandes de dinero. Porque en la realidad, cuando tú vas a mover dinero de un país a otro, de un continente a otro, hay una plataforma que se llama Western Union que trabaja a través de las oficinas de correo y te permite el movimiento de una cantidad de dinero en cuestión de horas, de un continente a otro.
I understood the words, but not the whole sentences. My Spanish is still weak.
She was saying there's a system, Western Union, that allows through the post offices actually to send money to a different part of the world in hours.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you're talking about something that on a larger scale.
With a little commission,
No, so that's a good point. So again, the way to kind of make it efficient is to have a single intermediary, right? So the problem of banks, we have many different banks and they need to interoperate. But Western Union is an example that one organization and says, we have money here, 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 and we give you the easiness of transferring money. But there is a huge payment for that. There is huge cost. But there is a huge cost for that. I want to tell you what is the cost. The cost is that you gave all of the control of the world's transactions in the hands of someone. And that someone controls everything. And for example, if that someone wants to take 5% on that transaction that literally should cost 0.01%, then that's what you pay. And that's actually the amount of fee that is paid today. You know the people that are working in a far country for the living of their families. For example, in Israel, a lot of Filipinos are working in Israel, and it happens in many countries. So they work very hard, and then they send once in a month. They send the money to their families, support their families. They do that for several years. They earn a lot of money in terms of their country, and then they go back. Every time that they need to send the money back home, it usually takes a week. They never know when it arrives, and it costs about 10% of fee, 10%. That's insane. Like to just move some digital bits from one place to one another, they work so hard for that money, and then someone just take 10% like that. There is no reason for that whatsoever. The only reason is the asymmetry of power. If there was no such asymmetry of power, it wouldn't happen, and it will not happen. This thing will completely disappear in a few years.
May I ask a question also? If this information is decentralized and it's present in so many computers, and what is the impact on energy and speed? So how much capacity, instead of having the information in the database in one bank, if you have to replicate that information in a huge number of the ledgers replicated, so can transactions be fast? Does it suck a lot of energy? Is it sustainable?
Yeah, so this is a question that is point like to another 40 minutes ahead in the future. I'll give you a short answer now and more elaborated after I speak about technology, how it works, then I can answer a more detailed answer. But just as a short answer is that, yes, the biggest problem of the blockchain, on one hand, yes, the biggest problem of blockchain is scale, is cost, energy, and so on. But I would say no, because that's exactly the problem that people are solving today. So already in the coming designs that are coming, all these problems are going to be solved. So I would say that at the end of the process, we'll have a scalable system, sustainable system, not energy costly system. It will be basically as costly as the system today, but just super more efficient. But to understand why there are such big costs today and how people are designing systems to reduce those costs, that I need to explain much more of the details of the technology.
This one should work.
Okay, so another example. Let's talk tracking system of digital asset. For example, diamonds. Diamonds are physical, but they have digital counterpart. They can have digital counterpart. You can basically kind of like stamp a diamond and then, imagine it has a shadow. Wherever it goes, this digital shadow goes with it, okay? It turns out that every year there are billions of dollars loss of cash of lost diamonds. How can that be possible? Like, how someone lose a diamond? That sounds impossible. How about if we had each such physical object would have its digital shadow, and when it goes from A to B, everyone in the world see that it goes from A to B. There is no way to suddenly disappear to C. It can just not happen because it just move with it every time, and it's just transparent and consistent. There is a company called Everledger, and that's exactly what they build today. So blockchain for diamonds. What about weapons? So much weapons is being, secretly moved from one place to another. But what if each weapon that is produced has its stamp on it, with a digital stamp, and then no matter where it goes, it has to stamp over here, and there is no way to just secretly lose your weapon to some other country. There is no way. I mean, the node, the agent that loses the weapon, everybody knows that agent has leaked that weapon. So there's another company that's built blockchain for weapons tracking system. What about freight transport, shipments overseas? Every year there are billions of dollars, this is a real number, billions of dollars of lost shipments. How can you lose a shipment? I've lived in India for a while. I've sent all of my stuff to India and back. And it was like 20 boxes of this size. How could it be that boxes have been lost? I mean, you cannot lose such a box. There's something happening there. And again, there are two systems, the Israeli custom system or shipment system and the Indian, and they have different protocols and mistrust and friction in the interface. And eventually something is lost and nobody can tell you where it lost to, who lost it. And what if I have blockchain for that? So there's another company called Waves, which are building blockchain ledger for shipments, overseas freight transport. So this is the simplest use cases for blockchain. This is the simplest usage of blockchain, and this is the most advanced stage of it. It's already in the product stage. And it's not yet about fairness. It's not yet about social. It's not going to change your experience totally in day-to-day life. It'll just make the economy much more efficient, much more open, transparent. Just save a lot of billions of dollars for everyone. So that's the first stage of the blockchain. And maybe the most interesting part of that chapter is about origin of materials, products, food. I claim that most people are good, and most people want to do good. But it's just become too hard to do good. And it's too easy not to do good. It's too easy to forget. I left it over there. I have my iPhone, which is so great. I love it. And it's too easy for me to forget what need to pay to make that iPhone. How much slavery all over the world is there to make my iPhone. It's just too easy not to know about it. And if I know that, and I know that, it's too easy to forget. What if every origin of component, every origin of material, every origin of food had... Only I hear it or everyone? I don't know. Everyone. Okay. So what if... At least we share the noise, so that's better. So what if every such material, component, origin, certification, it was like a digital stamp that went with it forever. So when I got my iPhone, I can click a button, get a file that tells me the whole story about every piece of that iPhone, where it came from, what was the salary that was paid to the employees that worked, to mine that material, what was the trades between, like every story of that. Would it be so easy to still do the wrong thing? So there's another company called Provenance that is just doing that. Blockchain for provenance of materials, stories of materials, products, etc. So we've talked about provable tracking of digital value. I talked with you about tracking. I haven't yet talked with you about initiating like P2P transactions. So tracking is half. Well, actually, it's third. It's the first third of blockchain 1.0. So tracking, everything that I said so far is about tracking system of digital asset. That's the first third, the first point out of 3 for blockchain 1.0. The second point is the ability also to transact. No longer I need, in order to send money from here to there, I don't need to ask anyone. I don't need the permission of anyone. I don't know intermediaries. I just click a button and that digital asset just moved over there. That's it. End of the point. Now it doesn't have to be cash. It can be anything. For example, I can purchase a ticket to the movie tonight, to the cinema, with a click of a button, and then I actually have that ticket. I have something which is consistent that is considered to be a ticket. And if 5 minutes before the show I just realized that I cannot go, I can just go to the marketplace of tickets and just sell that ticket. Just go over. I don't need to ask the movie cinema anymore, to theater, to exchange hands of those tickets. I don't need their, not permission, but not even their infrastructure. I have my own infrastructure to move that ticket. How about cars? If every car, instead of going, all the bureaucracy, or not even cars, how about lands? How much bureaucracy goes into selling a house, selling a land? You know that one of the biggest problems in the third world is the land registry? People lose their lands for hundreds of years because a new ruler came and just decided, no, this land is mine, it's not yours. And then they say, no, but it's theirs. And they say, prove me. And they have no way to prove. And then he says, no, I have another document that I kept for hundreds of years in my pocket. And he showed that document that claimed that it's his. And that's one of the biggest problems of the third world, land registry. So now there is Bitland, which is now doing land registry of the blockchain. So there is no longer possibility to lose your land. And more so, if you want to sell your land to somewhere else, anywhere, you can just with a click of a button do that. There is no bureaucracy, and it's 100% provable. No one can fake it. No one can restrain it. Just like that. Just as you take your cash and give to someone else, you can sell your house, and you can prove and claim ownership. So that's the second topic for blockchain 1.0. Transacting digital asset. Yeah.
O sea que lo que nos está diciendo Matan con esta historia es que, por ejemplo, esto puede ser el fin de los notarios y de los registradores de la propiedad. Y se puede simplificar las transacciones enormemente y de repente toda esa administración es absolutamente innecesaria. Puedes saber directamente si el que te quiere vender la casa es el propietario, si hay alguna carga, y no tienes que ir a ningún registro específico porque esa información está distribuida. Es así, ¿no?
Yeah, precisely so. For every possible industry, for every possible, yeah. So basically, everything will have a shadow, which is a digital asset, and this shadow is just with 100% one-to-one correspondence with the physical, object, and you can just transcend them just as you send email. That's it. That's the end of bureaucracy, the end of intermediaries, the end of inefficiencies, the end of fraud. Yeah. Yes.
El tiempo en el que estamos viviendo ahora, el tiempo en el que estamos analizando que todos estos cambios tienen que suceder, se supone que tenemos hasta 2015, hasta 2030, hasta 2020, para que de alguna manera todo el mundo, todo el planeta tienda a cambiar. Básicamente tenemos que cambiar uno a uno. ¿Qué mecanismos son los que se van a ocupar, a utilizar para que todo este aparato legislativo que rige las leyes, la propiedad de la tierra, desaparezca? Ellos no van a permitir eso tan fácilmente. ¿Qué mecanismos se van a utilizar para poder hacer que todo esto, todo este proceso se convierta en un clic y sea real?
Yeah, that's a great question that I've been kept asked all the time. So firstly, to be honest, there are no easy revolutions, okay? Even ending a war is a revolution, and there are no easy way to end a war, okay? When you end the war of when we ended World War II, so many people lost their jobs because so much of the economy was relying on war. So is it easy? No, it's not easy. Is it worthwhile? I think we all agree that it is. So the first answer is that there are no easy revolutions. And there are no revolutions with no loss for someone. There is just simply cannot be. I would say that it's happening very, very fast. There was no faster movement than the blockchain. The blockchain is faster than the internet. The way that it's propagated, it seems to me impossible that I tell you it's 8 years technology and nobody knows about it. And I'm telling you that it just has started to rise very rapidly in the last 2 years, even less than 2 years. For example, if you look at the investments, capital investment into blockchain, it's overwhelming the capital investment of the internet of the early days. The pace that this thing is happening is so rapid, solution will be created. Legislation, there are tons of legislation today, of legal researchers. My partner in the company that I will tell you maybe tomorrow, Backfeed, by the way, that is going to become a non-profit. My company, my partner is Primavera de Philippines, and she, for example, is a world expert in legislation, blockchain legislation. So there are armies of lawyers or law researchers that are just doing that. The same true for every possible industry, for investment, banks, insurance. Banks are just are acting like in a fire. They are basically running all over the place, looking how do we learn that technology, how do we do something, how do we get involved in that technology and not losing our pants, basically. Or at least investing in the thing that will kill us so that we will be invested already in the future. But the problem is that when such a revolution, when such a technology is developed very, very fast, very rapidly, there's a lot of mess. Nobody understands well the technology. Nobody understands, besides a very small number of people, nobody understands, I speak with experts and they don't understand anything about what they speak about. Even experts that's supposed to head departments. I was invited to the head of blockchain research of IBM in Israel. He's supposed to be the most senior person in blockchain in IBM, and IBM is the company that adopted blockchain the fastest than any other company. They made their own in-house research departments of blockchain all over the world. Thank you. And I met the head of that research, and after half an hour, I realized that he doesn't know what he speaks about. He doesn't understand the technology. So when things go very, very rapidly, there's a lot of mess. And those banks, those insurance companies, they don't know, who to invest in. A year ago, there were 20 companies doing blockchain. Today, there are 2,000 or 1,000 companies doing blockchain. Now it's impossible how to keep track of this, how to assess who is the right one, who's the wrong one. Every actor takes different strategy. Some actors it's called spray and pray. They just put them, throw the money all over the place to be invested in everything. Yes, there is a lot of mess, but also a lot of solution will be created, and pretty rapidly. And I think it's a major concern, but it's something to work for and not to be, it's not something to stop anything, just something to work for and to be concerned for. A similar thing happened with the internet. Like the revolution happened so fast that my grandma couldn't not use the internet, right? Or my mother. My mother, she's 70 years old, and in a normal scenario, she wouldn't learn a new technology at the age of 70. She didn't do that for like many, many years. But then she had to do that right now, because if she would not do that, she would not speak with her grandsons that are spread all over the world that now she can Skype with, right? So people are adapting quickly when such revolution take place. Okay. So I told you about the second part of blockchain 2.0, which was transacting. Maybe I'll just cover that. Well, what is digital value? So I told you digital value can be a shadow of physical value, but a digital value can also have internal value. So if it's worth tracking, it's valuable. How can it have internal value? It can become a digital right. I can have a token, a digital value, a token, with which I can do something on the web that gives that value. For example, if we're speaking about ride-sharing application, decentralized ride-sharing application, I will tell you more about that later, I can purchase rides with that token, so it has value. Okay, so that's just an example. Okay. So, you want to, wrap up, right? Yeah, so I'll try to wrap up. So, so I'll do very quickly those two slides, and then we'll get to the last point of that. So, as I said, I think it's the end of banks, but basically an end of other intermediate bookkeepers. Of course, I don't believe that banks will fall down. They will just find a way to participate in the new economy. But I mean the end of banks and as we know them. Peer-to-peer transaction, transparency, trust, efficiency, consistency. Yes. I told you there's some problem, not everything is digital, okay. I give you some homework, purchase your first Bitcoin, just a little bit of Bitcoin, and do a transaction. To me, it was a transformative experience, because you click a button, and you see that you have less, and you speak on the phone with the person that you transacted to, and he sees that he has more, and then you ask yourself how that happened, like who took care of that synchronization? There's no central server that does that. That's almost magic. And just to see that happening for me was exciting, was super exciting. I done that with someone else, by the way, one of my investors. I transacted him the first Bitcoin. He was completely shocked, like how it happened. That's pretty magical. So that's the last point for, I think, today. So the last point, I will not get into technical details today. I will defer it for tomorrow, but let me tell you what is the third part that already exists in blockchain 1.0, because that will become the main part for the rest. The third part is distribution of value. So we spoke about tracking of value, we spoke about transacting of value, and there is a third thing, which is distribution of value. Now this is by far the most important thing. If you control the distribution of value, you control everything, okay? People understood that for like 100 years back. If you control the economy, you control everything. And that's our problem. Everything is controlled by someone else. Everything is controlled externally by different interests. How about if we, as a community, can control our own interest? So that's already possible in a very, very primitive and rigid way in blockchain 1.0. So by the way, I didn't say that, but blockchain 1.0 was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a pseudonym. Nobody knows who is Satoshi Nakamoto. That's a puzzle nobody solved. He's an anonymous person. In 2008, he wrote a paper on the internet, said that's how digital cash should work. And then people have developed that, and that led to Bitcoin. It took a few more years before people realized that Bitcoin is not the interesting thing. The interesting is the technology that he was inventing, the blockchain. But already in Bitcoin, a lot of the things that later on been generalized, and I will tell you tomorrow, already took place in small, like in an example. So and to understand that I need to go into details, which I won't get today, but just to tell you what is the outcome. The outcome is that there is this magical ledger that we all agree about, that doesn't sit anywhere or actually sit everywhere. The way that it happens, without getting into the technical details, is that everyone participating are running a software at the same time, okay? Kind of the same software. Those people who are running those software are being called miners. Part of the Bitcoin protocol is to incentivize those people to run that software because they provide the network, they provide the blockchain. So to economically incentivize. So while as Bitcoin is the digital money that is being transacted between peers, it's also being produced every few minutes, every 10 minutes, new Bitcoins are being produced and distributed to the miners to basically incentivize them for supporting the network. So that's how it works, but think about the outcome of that. In that protocol, that network has decided what is valuable. That network has decided that having a distributed ledger is valuable. And those who support that mission should get reward, and they get the Bitcoins. Okay? So in blockchain 1.0, it still was really primitive, and the ability to encode your value system was very limited. In that case, it's limited to those who support the network. That's a very sophisticated algorithm. It's called proof of work. They prove that they work for the network, and then they are being rewarded with new tokens, which are mined, are created from thin air. Okay? But think about the consequence of that. There is a network that decided what is valuable for them, and then rewarded those valuable actions. The outcome of that many people around the world started to do that action. So by deciding what is your value system and incentivizing the action that are in line with your value system, you are basically moving community into actions. And that's the important thing. When I tell you about blockchain 2.0, I will tell you about new ways to design value system. And I will tell you about blockchain 3.0, I will tell you about generic, every possible way to encode your own value system into an economy in a box, where you and your circle can define what is valuable, incentivize for it, and lead actions to that direction. Okay? So that will be the end of my talk tomorrow, that I hope that I will come to. Thank you.